Are we ready to go?
Yes.
All right. Oyez, oyez, oyez. I will call to order the Sierra Madre Planning Commission meeting of October 3rd. Can we have roll call?
Chair Hutt,
Here.
Vice Chair Dennison,
Here.
Commissioners Dallas,
Here.
Catalano, Desai, Pevsner,
Here.
and Spears.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum and a new member. Welcome.
Well, thank you.
It is great to have another member, so we are all full, although we're missing 2 people tonight. But we will move on next to approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
Also move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Next to approval of minutes from the October 1st, or August 1st meeting. I have one correction on lines, the 106 to 108, the 2 sentences. I'd like them to read, Chair Hutt asked the applicant if they wanted a new garage or only added one to comply with code. The applicant stated that they did so only to comply with code. I can give this to,
And for the September 19th meeting minutes?
any comments?
I'm okay with it.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve those 2 sets of minutes with the noted corrections.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay.
I will abstain. I was not at those meetings.
Okay, motion carries unanimously with 1 abstention. And I think,
Actually, two,
oh, do we have enough then?
because I wasn't there.
Quorum was, at the time, was 4.
So we're not majority, we're half. Okay, I guess we'll have to continue this to next time. Okay, next we will move on to community input. Anybody who'd like to address the commission on an item that's not on the agenda, please come on down. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to public hearings. We have 2 of them tonight. First one is Hillside Development Permit 1507 and Conditional Use Permit 1507. Do we have a staff presentation?
Yes, we do. Also, this is going to be the first time the commission is reviewing the project for the Stonegate project. And we have a PowerPoint presentation to begin the presentation that Claire Lynn, Associate Planner, will be delivering.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Planning Commission tonight will be reviewing a hillside development permit and a conditional use permit for the property located at 600 Bowen Court, also known as Lot 25. Lot 25 is part of the 29 parcel subdivision. It is right at the entrance of the Carteria Stone Gate, immediately to the east once you enter the gate. The location is downhill from the McComber Cabin and the Carter Barn, bounded by Baldwin Court and Carter Avenue. It is in the hillside management zone, and the properties to the west and to the south are single-family residential zone. From the street view, here are the photograph of the site looking north from Carter Avenue. Here are photographs looking southeast and south from the Baldwin Court. Applicant is requesting a construction of a 2-story 3,719 square foot single-family home with an attached 2-car garage of 420 square feet. The total gross floor area is 4,139 square feet. Pursuant to the municipal code Construction of a single-family dwelling unit in the hillside management zone requires approval of a hillside development permit. And any development which can be seen from the location of Macomber Cabin, Carter Barn, and the Willis Estates is subject to a conditional use permit to ensure that the development contrasts with the design of these cultural resources. The project is fully compliant to all the code requirement as to lot coverage, building height, gross floor area, building setbacks, and parking requirement. Applicant has prepared a neighborhood analysis based on the sample of 43 properties within the 500-foot radius, excluding multifamily and vacant land. The average floor area is 2,349. The average floor area of the top 1/3 is 3,387. And the proposed floor area is greater than the average of top 1/3 by 332. Applicant is proposed a project with a 2-story attached 2-car garage. The building footprint is closely fitted to the form of the previously graded pad. Floor plan responds to the split pad configuration. Due to the location of the site that is closer to the single-family residential zone, architect has proposed a more traditional architectural style in craftsman architectural design with the low-pitched roof line and the tiered gable roof with wide eave overhang, exposed heavy timber rafters. It also proposed a partial width front porch that's supported by pedestal clad with river rock and brick trim. Exterior wall will be finished with hardy shingle panels, and the window treatments are 4/1, 6/1, and 8/1 window configurations with battered window casing. The project will incorporate earth tone colors, and it will comply with the low impact development plan and the water efficient landscape ordinance. And also, they will retain all the existing trees on site. Here is the conceptual site plan showing that the property has a dual frontage, which it has to retain that 25-foot setback from the Baldwin Court and Carter Avenue, which on the south, the west, and the north. The only side yard is to the east, which is the 10-foot side yard setback. The property is oriented to fit the contour of the site. And here it also shows the access to the garage from Baldwin Court and the locations of the 5 existing trees that will remain on site. Conceptual low-impact development plan shows the drainage pattern and the drainage that will be collecting stormwater on site and directed to a bottom infiltration basin. Conceptual landscape plan showing the existing trees are at the perimeter of the property. Tree number 1, 2, and 3 are coast live oak. Tree number 4 is a sycamore, and number 5 is a camphor tree. An arborist report has also been prepared for the property and evaluate all the existing trees. And all the existing trees appear to be healthy and will be protected in place. The arborist has listed a protective measure, which include installing the protective fencing around the drip line, of these trees prior to any demolition, grading, or construction. Also avoid heavy equipment storage and continuous digging and trenching within the drip line. It also prohibits dumping foreign materials and debris within the drip line to preserve the tree root zone. It also requires supervision under a certified arborist to oversee grading and construction work near these trees. Here is the first floor plan. It comprises of a step-down parlor area and a foyer, great room, kitchen, powder room, laundry room, and a guest quarter. Second floor plan shows additional setbacks from the north, additional 5 feet, and additional 11 feet from the west. Second floor has 3 bedroom suites that includes 1 master bedroom, and there is a loft area that could be converted as an optional 5th bedroom. Conceptual roof plan showing the multi-layered gable roof and the cross gable. There is shed roof on the first floor, covering the front porch. Here's are the sections that cut through the garage and the step-down parlor area. Proposed elevations. This is the street facade facing Baldwin Court. Here are the detailed elevations showing the front porch with the pedestal clad with river rock that resembles the Carteria stone gate, and also shows the tiered of the gable roof that terminates at the west side. It becomes a side-facing gable, and it transitioned down to the single-story element. Here are the elevations that's facing Carter Avenue. You can see that the exterior wall are finished with hardy shingles, and the configuration of the windows that are 4/1, 8/1 transom windows that is consistent with the Craftsman style. Colors and material board that will be used for the project. The dark olive greens are the colors for the shingles and the trim. The dark crimson colors are for the doors and the window. Charcoal colors are for the asphalt shingle for the roof. And the river stones has a blend of sienna brown and coronado color blend. The project incorporates earth tone colors. Here are the photo montage renderings that is from the Baldwin Court. And it also has lot 24 in the background. Photo montage 3D renderings from the Carter Avenue looking north. That shows the step back on the second floor and the single-story element. Another view from the Carter further east. And this is the view coming up Carter from the east side, and showing that the roof line blends in with the surrounding. permit findings have to be made in order to approve the project. These are the hillside development permit finding summaries that the proposed development is consistent with the general plan goals and policies and development standards, which include setbacks, height, floor area, lot coverage, and parking. The development is on previously graded lot, so it minimizes environmental impacts, and it does not impact the ridgeline view. Conditional use permit findings that the proposed project is adequate in size and shape. It contrasts with the existing historic structure in the vicinity, and it does provide sufficient access, and it does not interfere with the use, possession, and enjoyment of the surrounding. Stonegate design guidelines have to be followed, and the proposed project is a custom architectural design that responds to the site condition. The mass and bulk are reduced with breaks in wall plan vertically and horizontally, also with the split pad roof configuration with the deep overhang and architectural projection. There is a single-story element that provides transitions to the two-story massing, and the second-story massing is broken up and stepped back. All the window configuration are vertically proportioned and balanced. Project incorporate earth tone colors that mimics the color of surrounding landscape. Materials are durable and low maintenance, and the project will incorporate landscaping that provide vegetated screen, will reduce the visual impact from the surrounding. Alternative this evening before the Planning Commission is to approve the hillside development permit, or approve the application with modification, or deny the application identifying the findings that Commission feels cannot be made and the basis for rejecting those findings, or continue the project and provide staff and applicant with further direction. Staff is recommending the Planning Commission approve the application pursuant to the resolution and the conditions of approval. That concludes my presentation, and the applicant is here, the architect is here, and he has prepared a presentation as well.
Okay, why don't we get that presentation first, and then we can do questions.
Can I have a-
You have a specific question you want now?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So Claire, could you call up slide 2? And then you had some pictures, so go back one more maybe? Yeah. So these are the trees on Carter,
Yes.
and that's the sycamore. Are these trees city trees, or are they put in by the developer?
Developer, it was part of the planting plan from the original developer.
The original development.
Yes.
Can they be modified? Can we tonight ask the additional?
Yes.
Okay.
Modified.
Can you go to slide 24?
On your way, can you stop at slide 9?
Yeah.
Is the hashed line that we see that forms the right angle and then follows, is that the line for the setback from the two streets?
Yes. So this inner triangle here, roughly a triangle, this one, are the setbacks. So this is 25 feet all around. This is 25 feet from the property line.
Okay.
And there's no rear setback, right?
There's no
These-
rear because it's wrap around all.
So there's two fronts and one side.
Right.
Okay.
So my question is, this is the sycamore
Yes.
that we looked at from that picture. this, even though we're dealing with the property on 25, this continues still be part of the developer's responsibility, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so can you go to slide 24? So that's the
That's the
sycamore
sycamore.
that lines up allegedly with the end of the building, but this shot was taken further down on Carter, across from 42 Carter, looking back up at the house. Okay, and there are no street trees on the curb there.
Oh, no.
This is the sycamore that's way up, and there's one here, there's an oak, but that's way down past. So this is an open area.
Right.
And then on line 20, slide 27, so the last box, planting and vegetation screens that reduce the visual impact from the surrounding communities. So I just want to make sure we can address that. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
It'll be just a moment so we can change the presentation.
Okay, I have one question, and maybe the applicant can answer this, or maybe you can, in the staff report, there was a view that was farther out that showed the surrounding houses, and the plan for lot 26 was just a sort of box, because we haven't seen that one yet. Do we have that plan, or is there a plan in draft that's been submitted?
For 26, yeah, it's incomplete at this point, and that's with the different architects.
Because one of the issues in looking how this house fits into the neighborhood, and I think that diagram is very helpful for that, is that the block that's shown on 26 is shown sort of over a sort of steep area. And if you look at the pad on 26, the flat pad is very close to 25. And so although that diagram is very helpful for the houses that we've already approved or we've seen plans for, I think the location of house 26 is somewhat misleading as to how it's going to interact with regard to this property.
And
And
also
that's
the
why I
pa-
was wondering if we
this
had,
one. Also,
Yes.
that pad for 26 is actually closer to the street, to Baldwin Court, because it used to be the
the sales office.
sales,
off-
the sales, and it's the one that's already covered over macadam.
Is that A 2.4 that you're looking at?
I'm looking at A 2.5.
Okay.
Good evening, Chair Hutt and Commissioners. My name is Everardo Garcia with LCRA. We're happy tonight to present to you Lot 25 for the first time. I think it was seen very early on in the whole process. We had an initial concept, but it's the first time we officially submitted to you. Before I continue, I did want to bring up, we do have a SketchUp model, and it does have the models of the proposed houses.
Okay, great.
There, so you could see them as well within the framework of all the existing, the currently approved homes and our proposed home and future homes. They haven't gone through the process, but we're lucky enough to be able to get the models to put into our model. So what I want to begin with is to look at our site. It is a challenging site. It's a very focal site of the project. And we really looked at how to site the house in it. As Claire was very thorough in presenting, we do have a very irregular lot. We have 25 feet all the way on two sides, plus a 10 on this side. So our buildable area is really just this zone here, which does tend to work with the topography of the site. Really from this setback here The site does come down to Carter, the slope down here, and our pad as well does, it is stepped. There's about a 5-foot grade change between this level and this level here, and this starts to match the Baldwin Court elevation here. In siting the house, we looked at what's the best way to react to Baldwin Court and the community as we drive up. So we decided to locate the house pretty much perpendicular to the street, so it has a nice street presence and continues the street scene. And what also helps is to create, since it is an awkward, irregular lot, it helps us to create some backyard for the house. Because really, by the time you get here, it does slope down. It's really unusable space. So it allows to create these voids here that provide some backyard potential. And what we also liked about the siding is that it doesn't go along perpendicular with Carter, so you don't see the full expanse of the house on Carter. You'll always see it in an angle, which helps to diminish the massing and starts to help break up it starts to highlight the different steps that we've introduced. And as you can see in plan, we do have quite a few kind of undulating forms to help break up the elevation. Since we are limited to this zone, we kind of worked with that. We made sure we were still able to push back as much as we can the two-car garage, so it's not the most prominent element in the elevation. Even, as you can see, we are tight here, but we were able to push it back as much as we can, so it becomes really a very secondary form in terms of how the elevation is read. And here we do have a step-down parlor within the plan, so it starts to work with the step down in the pad. So the pad is about right here. It comes down to this lower area. Let's see. And just wanted to highlight on the second floor as well. We did pull in the second floor, allowing for one-story areas on the front elevation and the side elevations, in order to help break down the mass of the building and help it step up the hillside. Now, in terms of, as we looked at the elevation style, we looked at houses within the vicinity, and we looked to our neighbor to the west, which is 5 Carter, which is a nice craftsman house. And we felt that following in a similar style would be something that would fit nicely across Baldwin Court. It's a style that's very Sierra Madre. It's of the land. It seems to grow out of the land. And being that our site is a little higher, we felt it would be a nice addition and complement to the neighborhood. As we looked at styles in terms of the craftsman, we started looking at the large overhangs, a nice 2-story central strong mass with long horizontal forms or porches to help counteract the 2-story form. A lot of craftsman homes tend to have long, simple forms that are broken down into secondary elements. But it's still very simple roof, very linear. We have this one as well. It's just broken down into smaller ones. Not a lot of different roof forms. They're all going in the same direction, highlighted by some smaller porches and gables. And also the ability to add in certain areas overhanging forms with nice wood corbel details as a nice feature. So in looking at that, as we looked at our elevation, we tried to, as we worked on the massing, try to introduce 1-story elements on the first floor. We have a nice porch, a 1-story form, We have a smaller gable just to add interest and highlight the entry. We are using siding, shingle siding on the house, which is very craftsman detail, as well as some stone detailing on the columns and on the base. And this is that parlor that starts to step down into the lower pad here. And here is our garage, which becomes a secondary form, pushed back as much as we could. Since this site is a corner lot, we did look at the house as a full architecture house. All sides were designed to carry a consistent style all the way around. In the back, we have the strong, sorry about that. We have the strong, simple form highlighted by a two-story element. We have a nice overhang detail with wood corbelled details. And we try to use a lot of the typical craftsman details as much as we can in today's world. We do have the wood eaves, the windows with the very simple mullions, stone detailing. Now, this is a screenshot from our model and starts showing our house, proposed 600 Baldwin Court, which starts to follow the street and continuing and creating, really, at this point, the street scene as you drive up and see all the additional houses that have been approved and proposed lots here. This we wanted to show, this is a view from Carter a little further back. This is the 5 Carter, the existing Craftsman house, and then there's a secondary house in the back. 2-story Craftsman. What we thought was interesting about this one, this is actually built on a plinth. It is raised a little higher. As you come up the stairs, you go up to one set of stairs and you come up to another one in order to work with the existing grade. And what we thought that then helps to work with our proposed house in terms of building up onto the slope. As you're driving by, these will be very similar height, so one is not much taller than the other one. In the back, you'll see one of the proposed houses, which hasn't been presented yet, but it just gives you the idea of what I believe that's lot 1 would be there. And then just wanted to go back to these views that Claire presented. This is viewing from Carter looking, I believe, northwest, up towards the mountain. And what we liked is that because of the angle of the house, you're starting to see the house kind of in an angled view, so you don't see it front on. It's not a strong presence. It's broken down. You start reading the different forms. And I think color-wise and form-wise, it starts to work within the landscape. We did look at the colors, which is a very traditional Craftsman color scheme. And we thought that would work with the existing site, help to blend it into to the natural setting. And here you are looking at kind of the existing landscape. Even though this is outside of lot 25, I believe might be part of lot 26 or part of the site, but we know our plan is open to any additional landscape as a buffer. That would be definitely open for discussion. I think we like the idea of having the trees because it does help to blend the house better with the existing landscape.
I think before you go on, you can see in this one that you've got the pad for lot 26 there, and those bushes right on the right, that's pretty much the edge of the pad. So that means the house for lot 26 is gonna go
Somewhere
right
here.
there. So I think that, again, it's different than sort of the schematics that we saw.
And the model we have is updated, so that would be more accurate in terms of location of the Lot 26 house. And this is another, coming further down or further up Carter, it just shows another view of the house and kind of the different angles that you start seeing the house and how it will be visible. You start seeing how this house starts to step up on the pad and kind of work its way up the hill. Sorry about that. And then this is the view again from Baldwin Court. It starts to give you more of a pedestrian massing. We have the one-story element, which helps to bring down the mass as you enter the house. Now we do have, if you want to see some of the materials that we're proposing, the roof, which is a warm brown roof, as well as a manufactured stone that would be used as the base to the house and the front columns. And again, we have that SketchUp model, so at any point, if you'd like to see it, we can bring it online, and then we can move around and you can
Yeah,
and see the
that'd be
homes. And I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Are you gonna put the SketchUp model in now?
Yes.
Okay, great. And that one just comes out here, right?
Yes.
No, I think that one only shows on this for some reason.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, it came from that side.
Yeah. Could we go up Baldwin Court? Is that possible?
Inside the house.
Minecraft.
Yeah, exactly.
Where's the?
views you want to see?
I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you. Okay. We have questions for the applicant? I know that one thing you said about the site is that it's an oddly shaped site and you're constrained a lot by the setbacks. And I think that sort of pushed your house up into sort of two-story sort of long shape. And I'm wondering, as we did on the prior house where we had some relief of setbacks, if that could maybe provide some relief here to the sort of stackingness of the verticalness of the house. Of course, there we had a mountain to butt up against. Here we've got another street. I don't know how close we could get, but it does seem somewhat inequitable that you've got, 25-foot setbacks all the way around. And on the south side, as you said, the slope comes off, so you can't really, even if you wanted to, it wouldn't make sense to go south anymore.
Right.
So I would just be interested in your thoughts of bringing maybe part of the first floor north some.
I mean, there might be opportunities in encroaching into that 25-foot setback in order to introduce the mass and create a larger one-story element. That could be a possibility. I think there'll be a balance of how much we can come out. We also don't want to get too close to the street, so we can continue really the street scene. I mean, there is potential that we could do that. We could
I
study
had
that.
the same thought, because when I walked around the lot and I walked on Carter and looked up, I was very glad to see that you put the backyard on the Carter side, which put the house a little further back, so it's a little, that you use that, the sight line from the street is, protects it a little more.
Mm-hmm.
But I really wish that it would have gone a little further towards, even another 5 feet towards Baldwin Court, because then it would be less visible as from the people on Carter. And when we did this the last time, the big concern from the community was that the property was going to loom over the people below it.
Mm.
And because you're constrained with your setbacks, you've created a rather tall and long structure. And if we could get any modification of that so that its presence isn't quite as looming.
Right. I think it's something we could study. Having the opportunity to extend a mass and reduce some of the mass in the back, or be able to push it forward, would be some help. I think something to also keep in mind is that even though it does seem to loom, I think it would be very similar to 5 Carter, which is a 2-story form, but it does have some breaks in the back. But it is a tall element. I think a lot of it is we've become used to that house being there. Our side has been open for a long time, so I think the idea that it's going to feel looming just because there hasn't been something there before is something to keep in mind.
Yeah, but I think though that one of the things that's different about the 5 Carter house is you got sort of that airplane bungalow sort of feel to it, and the second story is much smaller than the first, and I think to me that's the big issue with this house, that you've got this verticalness to it that I hope we can explore ways to work on that.
I mean, I think that I agree with the idea of granting some relief to get it closer, but I think that what we're missing out on is pushing further down into, I know that it slopes, but there's a long distance between the back of that house and where the slope really truly begins. And being able to push that way and get some relief on the front side so that we could reduce and step more the bulk and massing, that it might have that same 5 Carter feel that you're describing. It's a little bit of apples and oranges, because there's a great big hill behind 5 Carter, and they could put another 3 stories on top and it still wouldn't be over the crest of the hill, right? So
Don't tell
not
anybody that.
Not legally.
Right.
It's something we can study as the house, maybe a portion of it can move forward a little, we can pull something also back. But also, we are limited to the amount of rear yard available
Yeah.
in the back, just because of the site condition. So we want to be able to stay on pad for the rear yard.
Okay.
So it'll be a balancing of maybe moving a mass in the forward and back.
Okay, before we get too far into deliberation, let's see if there's anybody else in the audience who would like to address us on this item.
Hello, I'm Sarah Jane Harmon, and I live at 650 Baldwin Court. So for the last two houses, there have not been the story poles. There have been these renderings, and I would encourage the city to have the story poles. It's much easier to get a view of all the different vantage points and how much the blocking and massing is going to be here. I noticed on some of these renderings that the hills don't look as steep. You know, the perspective seems to be just a little bit not quite what it would be if you were actually standing there. So I would encourage going back to having the story poles. Secondly, you know, there was a lot of discussion about that hillside along Carter. And I believe that that is HOA maintained. So if there's going to be a change in the landscape plan, I don't know if the HOA would have to pay for that, which we wouldn't be very supportive of, or you know how that's going to work. But that's something probably that the developer needs to look into. Is there anything else? No. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back for deliberation. Who would like to lead us off? Bob, you seem ready to go.
Sure. Well, like I said, that if because of the constraints of the lot, and we've been through the history of how the lots got there for, it seems like, over a decade, and you've built you're proposing a structure which I think is had the same concerns that the previous iteration did, where neighbors were looking at it as being, you know, looking down on. Now, when you look across Carter at 42 Carter, there's a tree in front that blocks some of their view. But I would highly recommend that you propose modifying or including some planting along Carter of large trees. And because you've chosen your color palette, I think the oak would be a good choice that would block the look of the house, or diffuse the look of the house as you came up Carter or as you went down Carter and you looked over. The house is still going to be there. If it's set closer to Baldwin Court on the lot, if you could even move it 5 feet, you may be able to reduce the bulk and massing, and then with some more aggressive tree planting, really break it up and hide it so that while it may still be a large house, it's not as identifiable as being a large house. And I think where you've used the second smaller front pad, you've been constrained by the drip line of the two oaks that are there. But I'm not sure that you used that area to its fullest extent. I think you could have made that larger and had the great room greater, and then the back part less great. I applaud you for putting the garage at the back and hidden around the corner, so that the thing that you see when you look at the house is not the garage. Although we're going to now start on a new phase of this development, where now in the past you've put a house on a lot and there have been no neighbors around and it can be looked at just as itself. Now we have more houses around, and as Chairman Hutt, began to foreshadow for you, that the relationship between the structures is also going to count. And like I said, I would be, my advice would be to use more planting and more mature planting to, hide the fact that there's a big house back there somewhere. What else is on my list? I liked the color choices. I think they were good. And the form I'm not comfortable with, because it's a narrow, tall building, and I think there's ways to be more creative on that. You have that one room that is a empty room that can be converted later, and that kind of sticks. Yeah, I don't know. It's either a room or it's not. But if it's not, then it, So I think that this is that you're close. It's a good first pass. I'm not quite comfortable with some of it, so that's my 2 cents.
Jake, give us your thoughts.
Okay. Well, I think it's a really difficult site to work with, and it's important to get it right because it's a very prominent corner. I like the choice of the craftsman styling and really the earth tones and the echoing of the gate. It's all very strong, and the battered prow, the parlor room is very nice with a sort of meadowy thing out in front. I think some of the 3D illustrations did get the perspective a little bit wrong. I think actually the back part of that house is going to recede more than you expect because you're going, Carter's dipping away, the slope is here, and the house is pulling away. So you're going to lose a lot of that mass coming up Carter. And especially if there's an added oak tree or something, it might be virtually not there. As far as the massing of the house, I think it's a really good job of craftsman architecture and imitation, and it's all the sides are nicely articulated with the ins and outs and the stepped roofs, and then the interior floor plan is really good. I am super critical about floor plans, but they really got the flow down and they're using the spaces really nicely. I think it's a really nice house. It's a bigger house than I'd ever want to live in, but I could live there. I think it's a challenging site. If I really like the idea of the story poles, just to clarify what we're all thinking, so we can actually see the different heights and whether it does recede and things like that. On the south side, if you want more of a sense of the first floor and stepping back, you could add a trellis, which would give it, more of a stepped feel, which would also be really useful on the south side. But I think it's a nice house. So.
I kind of agree. I like agree with you about the parlor stepping down. As far as what Chairman Hutt alluded to is probably going to repeat, and Commissioner Spears said about trying to stare this back, allowing you into the rear setback. I think that parlor kind of sets the tone, or at least artistically, for how the house can maybe dig in and step back a little bit. I know you're limited by your space. I think it's, if this house was on 5 acres on a creek someplace, I'd love it. I think it's a great design. I agree with I'm not an architect, but I like the symmetry of the roofs. Something in me tells me you're screaming for whimsy, which is great, in other areas. I think this is one area that I love the symmetry of the craftsman that you brought it to that. If there's some way to step that down like the parlor is, because that part of the house I love. If you get the mass back, I think you're in the right direction.
So, as we like to periodically remind the public, we don't have purview over the size of the pad or the square footage that's allowable on this lot, but what we do have to grade these against is really the Stonegate design guidelines. And so that was really what I looked at with this project the most. One of the very first things it says is development which is sensitive to the unique characteristics of the site and surrounding context. And so that's kind of what I used as my guide as I went through this. I, too, appreciated the craftsman style. I think that's always a great choice in this town. I don't know that sticking as closely as you did to the box-like features of the craftsman style helped you on this particular lot. Challenging lot, no question. Maybe a V-shaped house would have leveraged it a bit more and been able to help break it up, or an L-shape, but no matter what, it was going to have challenges on this lot, right? To the point that you said, this is a very focal lot. It's the very first one that people see. You're going to see it coming up Baldwin. You see it all the way across Carter as you come up that part of Carter. In section B1, it says that we need to minimize the building silhouette against the skyline. And I think that that parlor that is great that it stepped down, it feels like a good start. If you look at, I think it's A.2.3, the commission has been very consistent in the fact that we think you guys would be able to follow the lines of the hills by digging into those hills. You went down a couple of steps, but there's still these great big footings on the front towards the street. You could dig that whole thing down and push out a little further and harness such a great step down. The roof line doesn't change, so you're missing an opportunity there to help break up the massing to that second story. That would have been a great way to minimize some of that massing by digging into the hill. So that's something I think could have really helped. The practices say to use split pads, step footings, and grade separations to permit structures to step up the natural slope. So those are the guidelines where I think that parlor would have been a great opportunity to help start that breakup. And there's some great views that show as you come up the main street there that it really has a great gradation, but that's not where people are going to be seeing, because you have to actually be inside Stonegate to see those views. As you come across Carter from the east to the west, you're going to see this house bigger than life. And it's going to be years till these trees grow in and help soften that line. I think that the conceptual views, 8.2.8 and 8.2.9, really illustrate those challenges. You can't even see the parlor with the existing trees, and so there's no visual break helping you step up to that second story. And so what you read as you come across Carter is two boxes stacked on top of each other. And so, and the garage on the backside, you're only going to get half credit for that because of the angle that it's coming on around Carter. So there's just not the view to pick up the rest of that. So I really appreciate the work you guys did in trying to put steps on both sides so that we really get that massing, which, you know, it says right in there. Two-story residences are encouraged to have a single-story element to provide transition to the two-story massing, right? And that front one, great opportunity, kept the same line instead of really doing a true step down to help us visually perceive that. And the other spot that you did it is going to be not read as much as it could have. I thought that the colors you guys did were great. They're going to help minimize the view of that. That's definitely sticking with section D5. You mentioned the voids in the back of the house, and I'll just reiterate my earlier comment that I think that if you went further into that backyard area, you have another opportunity to soften the step up to the second story, even if it was more decorative than anything else. If you just brought a deck out there and put a couple of posts down, you wouldn't be getting as much into the slope as you're concerned about, but you would give us visually, as long as it wasn't covered, something to help get us to that second story. I feel like there's some great opportunities there to help us get to that second story a little softer than it is today, and pushing the house into this setback that's double penalizing you, I would have no problems with, and help step us up to that. I think that those would be some great, and lower that parlor. I think that those are three things that would really, really make this project look great. The symmetry and the size of the windows, I'm gonna echo that. I thought it looked great. I didn't see where the AC unit was going. I guess in the spirit of saving energy, there's just not gonna be AC, so that's exciting. I did like that the hardscape, it didn't look like there were fences or too much concrete pads. I applaud you for that. It's set in that natural corner there, and you guys really did a great job of leveraging that. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, thanks. Well, it seems like we've got sort of a mixed bag of reviews. I'm going to come down pretty much on the negative side on this. I think first let me get some positives out. I don't have any issues with the building next to the trees. I don't think we have any issues with those trees. Also, more importantly, I think it's important to note that we've approved quite a few of these houses now, and I think we've got a good working relationship with the applicant. We revised some of these houses to get them in a good place. So I'm hopeful that we can get this one to go as well. I think that we had some people come at our last meeting and speak about the issue of precedent and a big house. And at that one, I said, look, we're taking these one by one and we're looking at each lot. And the house we last approved was right up against the mountain, and it was a perfect site to hide a really big house. And it really is not going to be impactful to the neighbors or people in town whatsoever. This house is just the opposite. It's sort of up on a bluff, the setbacks do you no help, and it's going to be very, very visible. So I think this one really needs to be worked more because, as Tom said, this is a very prominent house, and this is not one that's sort of just way in the back and hidden behind some trees. And so, you know, not being an architect, I'm not going to be able to give you a lot of fabulous ideas, but fundamentally, you just got to squish this thing down, especially the second story. And I think the big problem you have is you're hemmed in by the setbacks, and then you've got these two-story massings, and you've got hints of first-story elements, but they're not enough to really do you justice. And to echo Tom's thoughts on the parlor, if you look at A23, you know, you're actually building up on the parlor instead of sinking down. And I think what you need to do is take that parlor and bring it out towards west, towards the street, and you need to make it bigger, and you need to sink it down, and even perhaps dig back into the higher part of the pad so you could have a part of the two-story element that's sort of to the northeast, that is the whole thing is brought down. Maybe consider thinking about the roof, the ceiling plates, and if you really want those that high. Maybe you could expand into the northwest setback. I would be in favor of reducing that from 25 to 15 for the first story, and sort of expanding, sinking, and then taking massing off of the second story so you really can read more. I'm also concerned about the interaction between this and 26, and you know, perhaps we can just kick the can and say, well, that's 26's problem. But you do have, instead of what really, to me, reads as a rear yard with a 15-foot setback, you have a side yard setback at 10 feet. I appreciate that you've backed the second story off somewhat, but I think you should at least back the second story off more, if not back that whole setback to 15 feet. And as far as the architecture, I don't really care. I mean, you got to get the massing right first, and the other stuff comes later. So, you know, except for my dislike for the fake rocks, especially the way they sort of randomly seemingly pop up instead of being a solid sort of basement element, I give or take on the architectural style. I really want to get the massing right first. So to me, that's where I would like to see. And if you want to keep the Craftsman, that's fine. I would just as soon get rid of the rock, except for maybe the garage. but I don't know if I'm in the majority on that thought. But I definitely like Tom's idea of stretching out the parlor, sinking it down, maybe extending that back so you can have some of the two-story element that's sunken down as well, and you know, have more of a break and less visual element on the second story.
Sorry, one thing I forgot to mention. I think that there's only 4 foot 4 inches from the front plane of the house to the garage. And I think that especially if you're going to pull that forward, I would urge you to leave the garage on that same plane so that it's set back even further. Because 4 foot 4, I think when you look over it in that perspective, it really looks good. But I think that that's not much, and that sinking that even leaving that where it is, if you push further and move and reduce that second story massing, is really going to help that read from the Carter side, which is one of the big challenges you have.
I think that no matter what house goes there, that you would provide yourself with some wiggle room if you put in some trees now on Carter that will mask whatever is there and make it less obvious. You know, the picture with the giant two-story, you know, presence there is taken from Carter, and that's, you know, that's what you see. And so I think there are ways. I think you're going to have to work around the trees on the lower pad as you work with that sunken room, and how you do that, you know, it will be very helpful. But it's that kind of manipulation in relationship to the trees that will hide a lot of what you're doing and allow and give you some wiggle room. So, you know, whatever goes there, I think you would be better off if there were more ways to make it seem farther away by putting trees and other kinds of vegetation in between. You know, because then it's, you know, it's not a problem because no one can see it.
I think also, you know, it might be nice and equitable of you if the HOA, if that's HOA land, to donate those trees to the HOA. I don't think the maintenance of those trees is going to raise your HOA fees at all. But you know, whatever the cost is, I'm sure it's not that much compared to the house, and you could pay to put those in. I think. Do you need more direction, or do you have any questions? I think it doesn't sound like there's a majority to approve the house tonight.
I have a concern about the suggestion of pushing forward on the Baldwin Court setback, because it sets up a bad precedent for that little neighborhood up there. Once this one gets it, then the others will want it. And it also disrupts the order of the neighborhood as you go up the street, because that is, although it's new, it will be one of the streets in Sierra Madre, and it should have the same high-quality feel as all the others. And so you don't want to start saying, well, you know, let's just make an exception here and push into the setback, because the setbacks are there for a reason. They create order.
Yeah, I think there's a trade-off that we have to face, and I think that the setbacks are from flatland, you know, where people have got rectangular lots, and they make sense. And one of the reasons, particularly why there's the flexibility in the hillside ordinance to deviate from those setbacks, is because we don't have those kind of standard lots. And I think here, where you have an issue of a 25-foot setback over, what, 3/4 of the property, if not more, you know, I think you have a unique situation that I don't think we're setting a precedent. But I also, though, on the flip side, agree with you that you don't want to just abuse that and make it so much that it causes a problem. But I don't have a concern with the precedent issue, just as I didn't with approving a larger house on a lot that could handle it. I don't think we're going to all of a sudden start approving houses at 15 feet from the street. This one is unique and different, so I don't. That doesn't heartburn me. I do, though, agree with your other concern that, you know, we don't want to just invade these things willy-nilly, and it has to be done sensitively.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, one of the tasks we had at one point in time was to figure out setbacks, and we had to come up with a formula for the average, because in Sierra Madre, you would think that there would be some standard, but there is not. And it goes from 5 feet to 40 feet, and we even had to go, we had to do some tortured math and some cul-de-sacs to get it all in. But remember, the next house up, 26, I think will be set back farther because the lot is a little farther back.
Yeah.
So it may have a more meandering set, which is fine with me. I don't need it to be in lockstep. I don't need it, because I don't want it, my sense is that I don't think that, and I don't think the developer either wants it to look like a subdivision. These are unique houses, and each one of them should stand out, you know, on their own merits.
That's a good point.
So,
I just want to say, first of all, thank you for your comments. I think we do have a direction. We'll study a way to minimize the second floor and play around with the ground floor. We'll take a look at the front setback. I think there's potential, hopefully I'm not mistaken, but I believe the porch is allowed to encroach. So maybe we can take advantage of just pushing the porch further forward and keeping more of the mass still within kind of the setback. Because I feel the same way. I don't want the house to be too forward and close to the street. But we'll look at that, maybe bringing down another one-story element and trying to kind of build up the massing of the house. But we'll definitely go back and take a look at that and see what we can come up with.
Okay.
Thank you
Would
very
you like us to continue this to a date certain, or do you want to renotice?
Probably need probably a month just to get everything in.
If you need a month, you need to get later than that, because we got a notice.
So we do have two potential dates, November 7th or November 21st.
You can make it a Thanksgiving house.
November 21st. We'll bring the turkey.
okay, we'll look forward to it.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to continue this item to November 21st.
I move we continue this item to November 21st.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, do people need a break, or do we want to just plow through?
Good.
I'm good.
Okay, next we'll move on to our second public hearing, which is discretionary demolition permit 1905 and design review permit 1908. Do you have a staff presentation?
We do, and we have a PowerPoint presentation. We're queuing that PowerPoint up right now, which will take one moment. So the property address for this project, this is at 287 East Montesino Avenue. The applicant is requesting a discretionary demolition permit for this project because the property is over 75 years of age, or the structure, and also a design review permit because the property additions will exceed the 3,500 square feet requirement or allowance in the R1 zone. Therefore requiring a design review permit for anything exceeding that size. Also, as part of a design review permit is if you have a second-story addition or even a new two-story construction, it requires a design review permit. The property did have a historic resources evaluation prepared for this project, and it was determined that it is eligible for historic landmark designation under criterion B, architectural. The site, which is highlighted in the center of this slide, is surrounded by single-family residential uses. East Highland Avenue is located to the north of the site, East Sierra Madre Boulevard to the south, North Cannon Avenue to the east, and Mount Wilson Trail to the west. As you can see, many of the sites are quite large, some of the parcels in this location of East Montecito Avenue. The project proposal includes demolition of a single-car garage, 223 square feet, and new additions to the existing 2,503 square foot single-family home. The additions total 1,443 square feet. 708 square feet is the reconfiguration of the first floor, and additions and reconfiguration of the second floor and additions total 735 square feet. The total habitable floor area of that residence would be 3,946 square feet. There's also a new covered patio that's being proposed located within this region here, and with a deck above. That totals 252 square feet. There is a two-car garage, new two-car garage, and a powder room, or a half bath totaling 573 square feet, for a total gross floor area of 4,771 square feet. These are views of the street elevation on the south and the north elevation at the rear of the property. The lot is just over 17,000 square feet. Closer view of both the front and rear elevations of the building. And it is in the Dutch Colonial Revival style architecture. There's partial east-west elevations, and also the 223 square foot garage to be demolished. A neighborhood analysis was prepared for the project, and just as a reminder, that excludes non-habitable floor area, so we're looking specifically per assessor's records at the square footage of the existing houses. And this represents a sample of 32 properties within the 300-foot radius map notification area. The neighboring home size, mean neighboring home size, is 2,143 square feet. The median neighboring home size is 1,858 square feet, and the top 1/3 is 3,119 square feet. So the existing residence, as mentioned before, is 2,503 square feet with proposed addition totaling 3,946. It exceeds the top 1/3 by 827 square feet. The project is largely in compliance with all existing zoning requirements in terms of lot size, lot coverage, gross floor area, and setbacks and parking requirements. The existing building does exceed the 25-foot height requirement by 3 feet 4 inches. The addition to the house will retain the 25 feet. The site plan, both existing and proposed, showing the expansion of the footprint towards the rear of the project or the property. First floor plan and proposed floor plan. Basically, there's a reconfiguration, relocation of the kitchen from here to a location here, creating a new laundry room and crafts room, reconfiguration of the first floor. As you can see, the porch wraps around on the first floor. That is going to be terminated at this location and will be infilled towards the back. The porch does retain the full porch view from the street with the exception of the wraparound. The second floor reconfiguration and expansion towards the rear of the building. Floor or roof plan. showing both new gable or hipped roof configurations and standing seam metal shed roof located in that area. There's an open balcony, and below that is the 252 square foot deck. There's an open trellis, in which we'll see in later renderings, and site plan will be an outdoor kitchen and seating area. Both the proposed and existing elevations, front elevation. I believe the new introduction of the second floor massing actually creates a better balance for the building. Again, we can see that the overall aesthetic of the ground floor porch in front of the house is still present. And the same thing here. This guardrail is still represented here, and that massing of that second floor addition is actually set back, I believe it's 11 feet. The north elevation or rear elevation proposed, and below is a partial elevation showing the areas of demolition on that one side. On the north, rear elevation. This is the location of the shed roof, the introduction of the two hip roof configuration. There's the balcony above, the covered porch below, and the location with the trellis structure and outdoor kitchen area. West elevation, existing, proposed and existing. And here's the area of demolition that would occur to be able to accommodate this attachment in addition. The east elevation, area of the addition, the upper deck, open deck, lower covered patio, and trellis structure. I would like to point out, let me go back one, that the stairs remain the same or in place, and now there's introduction of French doors to allow access to the side yard. New two-car garage, working with the grade to incorporate, this is going to be a half bath that will allow access to the pool area. There's also exterior stairs on this side here, leading up to a roof deck. .3D renderings of the building as proposed. As you can see, the area highlighted in red shows the location of that new second floor. Still deeply recessed from the front elevation, primary front elevation. The north elevation, looking at the rear yard with the covered patio, the open deck, the trellis structure, the addition of both the hip roof you can see on one side, and then a standing seam metal roof above the central projection. .3D rendering looking at overall massing and location within the neighborhood. Again, here's the area of the addition to the roofs and that flat standing seam metal roof. Another aerial view. There are a number of trees on the property, 24 trees. 12 of them will be removed. This is the tree inventory. I'd like to point out that there is a large oak tree that will be retained in place. There's another one in this location. This is a 28-inch diameter breast height trunk. This one is 18. There's another one back here. It's not apparent, or it's not shown on this tree inventory because it's less than 8-inch diameter breast height. It's at 4 inches. But the tree in this location, the oak tree, 18-inch diameter breast height with a rating of C-, is proposed to be removed, and that would be because of the garage, the location of the garage, and possible encroachment into the tree canopy. So as I mentioned, the arborist report identified 24 trees on the property with a DBA of 8 inches or greater. Most of the trees appear to be voluntary. 12 trees are proposed to be removed, 12 will remain. Existing protected trees include the 3 coast live oaks located on the latter 1/3 of the backyard. Oak tree number 22, per the tree inventory, has a 29-inch DBA. It'll be protected in place. Tree has a health rating of C-. And if you wanted to reference this, it's actually referenced in tree number 1 in the arborist report, which gives a more detailed description. Oak tree number 23, per the tree inventory, has an 18-inch DBA. That's the tree that is being proposed for removal. The tree has a health rating of C- as referenced, and it's also referenced as tree number 2 in the arborist report. Oak tree number 3 has a 4-inch DBA and is proposed to be protected in place. And as I mentioned when we were reviewing the tree inventory, that does not appear on the tree inventory. We were concentrating on 8-inch DBA and greater. This is the conceptual landscape plan. The landscape designer is here as well. He's also an arborist. The overall concept, there's a couple changes that will probably need to be remained. One of them, the wisteria archway on the driveway is actually kind of encroaching into the side yard setback. So that's going to be removed. This is a garden area constructed of raised beds with Corten steel framing in the garden. There is a cistern located here that's kind of a placeholder in terms of where it could actually live, but it's probably going to be somewhere in this location, but it would also have to be outside of the side yard setback. The property, here's the driveway. You can see a ball court within the driveway in front of the garage. Here you can see the garage access stairs to the rooftop garden terrace. There's rain garden or bioswales that will direct water to the cistern through above ground movement, through grading. You can see that there's a swimming pool, there's an outdoor shower in that location. It's a very detailed and interesting concept. A couple of cross-section views through the property. This is looking at the front of the house, looking at the vegetable garden with raised Corten steel planters. Views looking towards the rear of the property, so we're doing a cross-section through the garage, the garden terrace above that garage, looking across from the pool and the undulating landscape. And another cross-section, more longitudinal, across the house, the driveway, court, swimming pool, garden terrace above, and viewing across to the rest of the property towards the rear. Materials, composition shingle with color sable brown, and the standing seam metal roofing that will occur at the flat component of the roof at the rear of the property. also in a color, various shade of brown. Wood trim will be painted whisper. It's more of that kind of a white color. Dunn Edwards, or the wooden doors and windows, will be painted the almond latte, and the house will be, masking of the house will be painted this blue stormy sea color. Windows will be wood double hung windows, true divided light. Discretionary demolition permit finding summary. House was constructed in 1908 and is still an intact example of the Dutch colonial revival architecture. And for that reason, it is eligible for historic designation under Criterion B, architectural. The proposed additions and renovations are consistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, specifically standards 9 and 10. The design review permit finding summary. The property will continue to be used as a single-family residence and will continue its original two-story appearance from the street. The Dutch colonial revival architectural style will be retained, and that design style will be consistent with the original building and will be consistent throughout all elevations. The additions will comply with the setback, height, and roofline requirements. The views of the house from the adjacent properties will largely remain the same in terms of the overall bulk and mass of a two-story house. Continuing, the design does exemplify architecture that is thoughtful in terms of the additions maintain the architectural style. The additions are integrated with the original design, and the use of materials unify the exterior appearance of the house, and the landscape design will utilize water-saving features. A summary of the Secretary Interior standards. The character-defining features will be maintained in terms of the Dutch colonial revival detailing of the house. The project does not propose architectural elements of a different style. It'll retain its original two-story appearance, and the rear facade additions will resemble the original massing and roof form that was evident in the portion of the rear elevation that was proposed to be, or that is proposed to be, demolished. Continuing, the additions to the northeast and west or east elevations are consistent overall. The front elevation screen porch will be retained as viewed from the street. Several of the original wood windows, the front entry door and windows flanking the front door will be preserved in place. The new windows will align with the original fenestration, but will be slightly differentiated in order to distinguish the new construction from the original house. The alternatives before the Planning Commission are to approve the request for a discretionary demolition permit and design review permit, or to approve with modifications. The Commission can also deny the project, citing the reasons and findings for denial, or continue the project and provide direction to staff and the applicant. The staff recommendation is to approve a discretionary demolition permit and design review permit pursuant to Resolution 19-10 with the attached conditions of approval. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, do we have any questions of staff? Seeing none, we will invite the applicant to come down and address the commission.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Cole Butler. I'm the architect, and we have the landscape architect, the historian, the occupants' family, and neighbors here tonight, and we're happy to help answer any questions that we can provide for you.
So the garage that you want to remove is not a historical structure because it was put in, I think I read much later. It wasn't part of the 1908
It was put in by somebody like in the 50s? Is that
It was
right?
constructed in 1969 according
Yeah.
to the Historic Resources evaluation.
Yeah. It was built to just look old, but it's not a historical structure.
Actually, nothing there is historical, though eligible.
Right. Excellent. Okay. The porch on top of the new garage that you want to put in, is that going to look into your neighbor's yard on the west?
We would make sure that privacy is a priority to the neighbors to the west.
How can you do that? With what? Trees or something?
Trees or something.
Or something?
Well, we do have a height requirement on the side, so we want to respect the neighbors and honor the code that we work with.
Yeah, because the existing fence is just 4 foot tall, and there's nothing really in between.
It would be better than what is there today.
Yeah? Okay.
We would rather a large structure not be there. We are complying with the parking requirements, so we need to make something that's much bigger than is there now.
Right.
But by trying to, bury it a bit on the sides to
Yeah, I think that
push
part
it
is,
back
I
in.
think that part is very well done. I just, the fact that when you put people up, 8 feet off the ground and they're looking around, you don't have a lot, you have open sight lines to the neighbors on the west and even across through the trees to the east. So, to the north, you've got plenty of trees that are, it looks like a forest, that's fine. But I'm thinking about the neighbors on one side that are, you're going to look at them.
We want to think about the neighbors to that side as well. So we would like it to be, we would like those neighbors to want to come over and, that it's compatible. We are in discussion with neighbors that they're all happy. that
Okay.
There is nothing but beautiful landscape to be in awe of. So we would like to have this project be a demonstration to other sites in Sierra Madre of what you could do with water savings. Really, that cistern is catching the water coming from the roof. The berms and the hugels are actually perking the water into local.
The other question I have is that there's an olive tree on the west side,
East side.
east side rather, that's up against the porch that you're going to remodel. What are your plans for that olive tree?
Let me consult Sean.
Can you come to the microphone, please?
Thank you.
We need to record everything.
Yes. Hi, Sean Mastretti. I'm pretty sure that tree was slated for removal, but if not, we can take a closer look at that.
That's fine. No, that's,
Yeah.
trees growing up against the house, the fireman in me gets,
Right, we
Tense.
are in a sort of a high fire sensitive zone.
where?
You wanna be sensitive to that?
Okay.
Any other questions? Would anybody else like to address the commission on this? Wait, please come. Yeah, I'm sorry to make you do it, but we have to have it in the microphone. It has to be recorded.
I'm Catherine Budworth, and I am the Roberts neighbor to the west. And I'm very encouraged and pleased to see what their plan is. I think it will beautify the entire neighborhood. And as far as seeing into our driveway, what they would look at is our driveway and in front of our garage. Our house is set further away from their property.
You have the best garage in Sierra Madre. That's a very cool garage.
Thank you. Actually, we have a very cool house. So, yeah, I am personally very pleased with the color scheme that they've chosen. I think it will do nothing but enhance the neighborhood. And that house really does need a different footprint somehow, to be a little bit more bulky in the back, because it kind of looks like it's not finished. So I think that would be a big improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for deliberation. Bob, you want to start us off? Bill? Bob? Whichever. I'm mixing people's names up now.
I'll just be brief. I think it's a good, it's a improvement of the property. I didn't get a chance to see it when it was available, so to walk the whole property, but they're not changing really the front of the house. They're pushing everything to the back. They're putting a big porch, which we like to encourage, so I think it's all in keeping with the spirit of the style of that home. So I think it's not going to be a problem to approve.
I think it seems like a lot of attention to detail has been spent to do a good job on this and really put forth a great project. Similar to the questions you asked, I had concerns about putting people up onto a rooftop and the visibility into the house to the west. Seems like current owners of that house have addressed that. The property to the east, it's unclear to me where the trees that are there or will be there are going to line up with this new addition. Putting a window up there looking directly over into that yard is one of those concerns that we have from a privacy standpoint. And so that was my one reticence on this project. I'm not sure it rises to the level of needing to be addressed, but it's certainly something that we only walked the property. We weren't up high enough to really see what that view would have been into the yard next door.
Okay.
So, full disclosure, I own a house that was built in 1889, and I had to do this because in Sierra Madre, the houses are built a long time ago, and at one point in time, they all have to be upgraded and rehabbed because somebody has added on to them and done various alterations. I did mine at the back of my house, and I replaced the garage, and I see this as being a very similar project. You've been very sensitive to the design of the house. I think the front of the house is going to be improved by the modification. I'm very encouraged by the work of the architect. The few things that I have, the concrete block that's shown to be used around the rear deck, there's got to be something better than concrete block, I think, for this. This is a beautiful old house. I think there's ways, there's got to be something better. The concrete block looked disappointing. You've already told me that the olive tree is gonna go. I would like to have you agree to underground all the utilities. Currently, the cable and the phone come in through the driveway across Montecito. You do have a utility pole on the property line to the east, and I think you can bring everything up to that utility pole and underground it in. This is a beautiful old house. Having wires come in from various directions, I think, does not do it any favors. I think it'll help you set off the house, and quite honestly, when you're done, if there's a problem with the phone or anything else, it's not on your property, it's somewhere else, and you don't want to have lines come down. But I will make that a stipulation. I think you've done a very good job in maintaining the architectural style of the house. I like the additions. I think you're going to need to put a few more trees in to give your sense of privacy. There's some holes, I think, now, both to the east and the west, where you look out. I've been on this commission long enough. I remember at some point in time, someone came to us with the property on the east, and they want to subdivide it and put it, on a north-south line and put a house that would be closer to yours, because currently the house is farther away on that east property. I don't know whatever happened to that, but I do remember having to talk about it once. I mean, we don't know what happens after it leaves here. It's all a mystery. But I know that it was something that somebody was thinking about. I like the color schemes, but I would like you to change the block, and I would like you to underground all the utilities, because I think it'll do your project, it'll make your house a better house. But other than that, I applaud you. You're taking a beautiful old house and you're moving it into the 21st century, which I'm sure it needs, because mine did too. So good for you.
And just a point of clarification, that block wall is actually part of their outdoor kitchen, but I had a similar concern as well.
Whatever. There's got to be something besides concrete blocks.
On the drawings, it actually shows like a stonework, and maybe it was a rendering issue.
Okay, if it was a rendering issue, that's
don't know.
fine. Yeah, good.
I'm glad this beautiful old house is being loved and restored and brought back to life and retaining its character, especially in the front. I think the owners and the architect have done a really good job of stitching on the new to the old, and the landscaping is very nice, and I'm sure the bears will love the vegetable garden and and the deer. But yeah, I like it. It seems very appropriate and well thought out. So.
Okay, I echo my fellow commissioners. I think this is a neat project. I think this is a funky, cool old house that's only going to be made better. It's going to be a very big house, but I think it's going to fit in. And I think one of the things, if you look at just the math and the numbers, you think, oh, this is going to be too big for the neighborhood. But I don't think that's the case at all, because the additions are going to go in the back. The lot is very large. It's not prominent and visible like the last house we just looked at. So I think it can carry this size without issue or undue burden on the neighbors. I don't have a problem with the loss of the one oak tree, because I think there's a lot of other trees. I do find problems with the arborist who thinks asymmetrical oak trees are a bad thing. That's a good thing. That's interesting and fun, and that I think brings character to Sierra Madre, so I don't think we should downgrade oak trees that are lopsided. To me, we can make all the findings, but the key finding here is finding 8B, which is the preservation of the historic structure and the reuse of that. And here you talk about having a project go to its site and be site-specific and thoughtful to what's there. And in this case, that means the historic house. And that's what this project is doing. Not to mention another house, but I really don't want to see come back a demolition request for the whole house. But luckily, I think the amount of care and detail that's been shown gives us a lot of comfort that that's not going to happen. But I think to me, it's fundamental in the approval of this house that we're preserving historic fabric, that we're adding on and preserving rather than tearing down and rebuilding from scratch. So I can definitely approve and make the findings. I agree with Bob on the undergrounding. I don't agree necessarily on the block, because I'd rather see CMU than fake blocks. But I'm sure you guys can figure out a good covering that'll make everyone happy.
They're doing a great job of retaining the steps that are on the porch now, because they're going to keep those steps. And so some of that old concrete work, I think, has a sense of the past and whatever. So, find a really old concrete guy, and have him make it for you. I don't know, but I know that there's a solution out there. I'm not an architect. I rely on architects to know these things, but I just, that the block just gave me.
Just don't glue on Home Depot rock number 3, okay?
Please, yeah. There's nothing, actually, there's nothing at Home Depot that can help this house. Absolutely. You're gonna have to, and that's gonna be part of the challenge. You're going to have to go and find and have stuff milled for you and sawn for you. And there are places that do that, and I'm sure we can all help you on that, because we've all been down that road. But Other than the appliances, there's nothing at Home Depot that can be used on this project.
Right. I think one other point I'd like to make is that I'm really impressed with the water saving features on this. We get plenty of houses that come through and they say, oh, we're going to comply with the city's water saving code and that's good enough. And y'all have clearly gone beyond that, and I appreciate that. And I think it's that kind of thoughtfulness that we're really going to need going forward, because our water issues are only going to get worse. And so I applaud you for that, and I very much look forward to seeing how this looks when it's done. So, anything else? I will entertain a motion.
Also move.
Can we repeat those finding, or
The conditions?
conditions?
I think we've got undergrounding. That's
Underground, all utilities. That includes the phone and cable, because they come in across Montecito from the far side. And they go up the driveway.
You also mentioned additional trees to the east and west.
Additional tree coverage yeah, because and I think you'll want that anyway. It sounds like you want to do outdoor entertaining and you want to have people up on that porch, and so you want to be screened. And you have a wonderful neighbor, and she's got the coolest garage in town. I'd love that garage, but you still, the garage, no offense, is not something worth staring at for more than 5 minutes, so.
Oh, can I?
Yeah.
One concern about the trees to the east, is there a view out that direction? I couldn't quite tell
No,
when I was there.
no.
Would additional trees be taking a view away? Okay.
And do we still want to
Two
include,
landlocked lots.
or we can rephrase it to restudy the use of concrete block on the outdoor kitchen area?
Yeah, anything but.
I think we can, this study is a good, and I think we can leave that to staff's discretion to
And
review.
it is more so shown on the architectural elevations, but in the rendering, I had to cut my staff off at some point and
Yeah.
say, stop putting all of that detail in the most expensive drawing. I need you to move on to the other drawings. So it will match real rock. It will not be anything manufactured. It will resemble rock that is there today that is not manufactured.
You may even find some when you dig the foundation for your garage.
I sure hope so. And I would be honored to share as much of the water savings that we're going to be doing on this site. If we can, if it's okay with the owners, that we could also use it as an example, or have workshops, or have some parts of the process be available for an educational component. We certainly will. We're here and we're going to do it, so we're happy to teach along the way or share the model for more lots to fall into.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I move that we approve discretionary demolition permit 1905, design review permit 1908, and pursuant to resolution 1910, subject to all the conditions that have been previously stated.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, now we will move on to Planning Commission reports. Does anybody have anything? We have a new commissioner. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Peggy Dallas, glad to be here. So, I enjoy the discussion, and so it's interesting to get the different points of view, and valid points are made, and so.
Great, well, welcome. We are very glad to have you, and look forward to more fun meetings.
And I would also like to point out that Peggy Dallas is also a licensed architect.
Oh, that's very, very good and helpful. We definitely could use that expertise.
I do think architecture matters, but.
It does. It does a lot.
Okay, do we have staff report? Or staff reports?
So we have one project that is scheduled for November 7th, a new design review project, and also we mentioned Lot 21 or Lot 25 coming back on November 21st. the project that I had scheduled for October 17th got bumped. They were not going to be able to get the project ready in time, so they elected to move to the first meeting in November. That means at this point, we do not have a meeting or project items scheduled for October 17th, our next meeting, unless there are some suggestions from the commission. And one of the items I wanted to mention was if we can get an update, or did we want to discuss the commercial parking revisions at this point?
We have our first draft that we're working on. I guess one question we have is we've identified a number of issues that are outside of the zoning code and that are in the traffic, and I forget the title of the other titles that deal with parking, that are on-street parking. And we've discussed both at this meeting and in the subcommittee ideas about how we could increase parking by doing more diagonal parking on Baldwin, and also some safety issues with the red flag stuff. And I don't know, is that something that is within our purview to look at, or maybe suggest code revisions, or is that something we're better to say, hey, here's our thoughts on zoning, and these are some other issues the city council might want to consider?
We can do that. We can also ask the Director of Public Works to provide some further insight on that and what the purview of the commission might be regarding making those types of suggestions. I know the City Council has also discussed that and to identify other parking opportunities, especially with a discussion of some of the proposals around Kirstein Court and potential loss of parking, and then just overall seeing if we can capture additional parking in the downtown. So that is certainly something that we could discuss and get further direction on, and see what the possibility would be from our Public Works Director.
And the Public Works Director is probably most tuned into parking issues in terms of, where we can park and things like that, because I'm sure it's on his agenda on a weekly basis. And he may be aware, and he may even have plans that we are unaware of that would be, and quite honestly, in this city, I think if a conversation with him, or at least having him provide us advice, will go a long way with the city council, because it's not as if we are off in our own world making up. We will get input that is realistic, that can happen, as opposed to a pie in the sky kind of stuff.
Right.
I think if there was a question about what's in your purview and you feel like you couldn't address one without the other, you could always seek direction from council, and council can provide you direction to look into that as well. So that's always
Isn't that how we got here?
Yeah.
They kind of gave it to us?
I'm a little leery of, one of the things, we're doing the parking now because we did the commercial code. And, at some point I'd like to complete something instead of just adding on to our charge. And so maybe I think at this stage we might want to tackle the zoning issues and then say that these are further issues to review, and whether they want us to address them or just provide our input and they can address. To me, I feel like I personally have a decent hold on the zoning, but that other stuff gets outside of my knowledge, and I'm sort of afraid to start, amending one piece of code when I don't understand how it interacts with other parts, unlike the zoning, which we've dealt with quite a bit. So, but I do think, the issues that we've raised or we've thought about are important. So, I guess we could move ahead with the zoning parts and put that, and I guess the other question is, we're gonna update the parking, and we've already updated the commercial, but then we're gonna have to tie them together. So, do we want to bring back our thoughts on the parking and then have the full commission discussion, and then have the subcommittee go back and tie them all together so we can put it all together in one piece, or do you want us to just bring it all in one piece?
Does bring it all in one piece mean that you will have already reconciled it, or does
Yes.
bring it all in one? Yeah, otherwise we're just gonna look at it 3 times, right?
Yeah.
2 is better probably than 3.
Okay. It sounds like I don't think we could get the parking and the commercial reconciled by the next meeting in October.
Yeah, I agree. I won't be here on the 17th either.
So I think it's probably best to just cancel that meeting, and then we can look at this in November, December. I will definitely we definitely can do it by then.
Can the subcommittee meet with the Public Works Director and ask about, thoughts on parking? Because there may be things that they're,
We can certainly do that, during regular business hours. We can reserve the conference room, and I'll sit in on that as well.
that might be helpful, because there may be a solution here that is already being considered that we are not aware of. And it would waste our time and their time if we proffered
Reinvent
something
the
that.
wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, poorly.
Yeah. 'Cause we're not good at that, so once we get outside our
That
area.
would just be restricted to the subcommittee members, which is 3 of you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So send me some times of your availability, and I'll work around your schedule and see what we can do.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So who is on the subcommittee?
Yeah,
And Joe.
Joe Catalano.
That
Do you have-
concludes
Do you have
my update.
emotional attachment to parking?
And commercial, it's just
Um,
most things, yes, emotional.
I can send you a copy of the commercial code updates that we did before, so you can study those,
Okay.
and you can see what we had on that, and that'll help you come up to speed, so that when we bring it all back, it can make sense. So our next meeting is November, which?
November 17th. I mean, November 7th.
November 7th. Okay, I will adjourn the meeting until November 7th.